I sat on the bonnet of my car, parked by the calm seaside, sucking in the pleasure that only comes with true freedom. It was the first time in 5 months I felt like how I did tonight, and I must confess, I missed this feeling. How sooner I would have had this if only I had the courage to do what I just did. It indeed was an irony that I sat alone in this secluded environment, making a toast with the same wine which was supposed to be popped tonight, in a luxurious and tastefully furnished banquet hall. The wine which would have filled my glass and that of my newly wedded wife. The wine which would be popped as toast was made in my wedding party to my new status as a husband, and that of my fiancée as she became my wife. I checked my watch. It was already past 9 p.m. My phone was switched off deliberately. I knew there would be a shitstorm of messages barraging their way through, but I didn't care, at least not anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if I had cops on my tail as a missing person, but I doubted that would be the case, as everyone who would have thought of putting out a search for me would already know by now the reason why I was absent from my own wedding earlier today. It was the sweetest revenge I could take on Alice. She didn't see it coming, no one else did. Except for my friend Matt, who was in charge of mailing out the pictures to guests. That would be enough to let them know my position. If I had been told a few years earlier that I would ever do such a thing to her, I would have argued to a standstill. But I, perhaps, would have been even more aggressive in doubting that the girl I loved with all my heart, whom I thought loved me with the same energy, would leave my heart shattered on the floor with incessant cheatings. I am Harris, a software engineer, and I met Alice while on a routine maintenance job at the firm where she worked, which happens to be a client to the company I work with. It would be really difficult to pinpoint which exactly attracted me to her, for indeed she was a smashing beauty, tall and elegant, perfectly built with the perfect soft curves and hard edges. I was more wowed when I realized that she was the company's new HR. Such a great accomplishment it was for her age, and it instantly got me hitched up to her. It could be true that when you begin to fantasize strongly over a person, chances are they've begun noticing you. Although she just got into town because of her employment, I got to know her friends. They all seemed to be wild cards, but I was convinced that being a human resources manager of a reputable organization, she was definitely different. How wrong I was. But I was in love and too blind to see through the lie. Things had been all rosy between Alice and I for 2 years until 5 months ago when we began making plans for our wedding. Her trips back home had increased a little more, and I had no problems with that. She had siblings, and hers was a pretty large family with relatives who lived luxuriously in a semi-urban community. They were all part of the wedding preparation and planning for their daughter, and I was totally cool with that. Since she worked all week, she now visited home every weekend. On Fridays, she drove to work with her bag packed for the weekend and traveled from there. She would resume to her office on Monday and would text me once she was back in town. But on this Monday, something was quite off. I received a rather naughty text message from Alice talking about how she enjoyed our last night's episode and how she couldn't wait to tear me apart upon sight and have me begging for more. For a moment, my world went bleak. It was totally bizarre. 1,000 ideas crossed my mind because we had never done any of such before. I may look rough, but I indeed am decent. I tried not to assume, although I felt my heartbeat racing with fear. I placed a call to her to make sure the message was from her or to be sent to me. Her phone rang twice and she only picked up on the third. "Hello, Alice. How's your day going?" I asked. "Hi, darling," came her charming voice. "Couldn't get any better." "Did you by chance send me any text?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, then said, No, I didn't. Sorry, I forgot to text you when I got into town." "It's not that," I said. "Could you just check your phone?" I hung up and I could feel my pulse. I refused to believe the thought that was screaming in my head. It was not possible that Alice was cheating on me. A few minutes later, she called back. She sounded quite hearty and laughed as she said, "Never mind, Harry, it's nothing. I was just thinking we could switch things up a bit." "Oh, I see," came my doubtful response. But something was not sitting right with me. "Where are you?" I asked. At the company's conference room," she responded quite confidently. "We're about to have a resource person talk to the management staff. It's a little training. Don't worry, I'll tell you all about it when I get back. We're about to begin. Love you," she said, and hung up. I felt completely uneasy. For the first time, I had suspicions about Alice. The more I tried to shake my mind off the thoughts, the more they seemed to flood in. Even if she wanted to cheat, our wedding was just a month away. It was unthinkable. I thought of calling her secretary, but loathed myself for even imagining that. I checked, but could not find her secretary's number. Luckily, I had the office phone number, and I hoped it would ring at the secretary's desk. My heart skipped a beat when it did. "Hello, who's on the line?" came the professional voice of her secretary even before it rang. "Hi," I said. "I would like to speak to the queen of my heart, your boss." "Haha," she laughed. "That can only be you, Dave," she said. I froze. Who was Dave? How often did he call the office line or visit the office for the secretary to know him? My mouth went dry. I, however, tried not to express my shock, so I played calm. "No, it's not Dave," I said, feigning a chuckle, secretly dying to get words out of her mouth. "Quit playing around. Isn't this Dave, Alice's ride-or-die ranger?" she asked quite seductively, as though she had an interest in whoever the guy was. Now this was getting interesting to me. "Sorry I didn't hear you," I lied, only buying time to record her while she repeated the question with further description, including hot boyfriend. At this point, I was convinced it wasn't a joke anymore. I could feel my temper rising, but I needed to elicit more information and could not let my anger blow my chance of getting a good lead. "Well," I said calmly, "it's fine. You got it right. Now would you please let me speak with her? I can't reach her line." "I'm sorry about that. Well, she's on her way to your place. She left about 40 minutes ago. Maybe she's caught up in the traffic downtown," the secretary said. "Oh, that's fine. Thank you very much," I said, then hung up. My doubts were cleared. I walked to the shelf and helped myself to a full jug of beer. My eyes stung and my jarred as I gulped, trying to drown my pain with the burning sensation of the drink. 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. Our wedding was only 1 month away. Invitations had already been sent out. I had paid for the hall and foods and drinks. The more I thought about it, the more I cried bitterly. I had never cheated on her. I never would. I loved Alice so much, and somehow a part of me wanted to give her a fighting chance to redeem herself, so I decided to talk to her about it. As I expected, she denied confidently. She accused me of thinking up things. I felt bitter looking at her lie to me in the face. I wish she knew. For a few days, things were quite strained between us, and the weekend came. I decided that if I needed anything, it was going to be concrete evidence. So I hit up a friend of a friend, Matt, who was a private investigator. Come Monday, he handed me an envelope of pics of her and Dave going to various motels, hotels, cafes, and engrossed in compromising positions, sucking their faces off, etc. All the while, she was planning a wedding with me. I took one glance at them and nearly threw up. First thing I did was get on calls with all the vendors we had hired for our wedding and asked for a refund because I was rescheduling the wedding. I knew it was an outright cancellation. A good number of them agreed to full refunds as the wedding was still a month away. The only thing I didn't cancel was the venue, which we had booked at a 30% discounted price due to a promotion by them. So I didn't care anyway. It was nothing fancy. Her dress, bridesmaids' dresses, and makeup were all paid by her. I had begun to loathe the very thought of her. As time went on, I noticed she began acting quite nicely around me, probably excited about the wedding coming up in just a few weeks. As the weeks rolled by, her trips increased, but I was not concerned anymore with what she did. I simply nodded and gave approval. Since I made almost all of the payments, I was prompt to generate fake receipts and send them to her as proof of payments made for anything she desired. Somehow, I had fun doing this. I watched her get on long calls, making sure everyone was informed and coming. With the wedding only a few days away, I had mixed feelings. A part of me wanted to work things out with her, but it fell through. On the evening when I decided to give it one final push, 2 days to the wedding, she suddenly received a call and was out to meet the event planner. That was when I knew it was completely over. I couldn't contain myself. I cried my eyes out. The next morning, I arrived at the climax of my plans, which was having her give me the contacts of everyone who was invited for the wedding. I forwarded them all to Matt, who knew what it was for. With the wedding being 1 day away, I called a beach resort out of town and made a reservation. I had already talked to my boss about working with clients whose jobs were mainly remote. I planned what I wanted my new life to be like. I couldn't wait for my wedding morning. As I drove to the hotel where Alice had dressed up, I was at peace. Seeing her all ready for a wedding which was not going to hold. How wicked. I cannot deny that she looked dazzling. But all that didn't matter to me. I saw the look of excitement on the faces of her friends and family. Her secretary was there too, and I knew the others would turn up at the venue. As I held her hands and looked her in the eyes, I said, "It's time for me to go and prepare for my new life." I knew she didn't understand. Perhaps she thought I meant that I wanted to go and get dressed for the wedding. But in my car's trunk, I had my luggage all packed. The wedding was scheduled for 10 a.m. I know I was supposed to be there first as the groom, but that plan had changed. I made an arrangement with Matt to forward by 10 a.m. the pics of Alice's misdeeds to all the invited people's emails, as well as have it projected on the monitor screens at the hall, with a goodbye message I had written. At that time, they would all have been seated and wondering what kept the groom. My phone line would be off, as it still is right now, and I would be out of town. Far away from a marriage I would have regretted. The only thing I feel bad about not seeing is the morbid look on her face as the pics of her unfaithfulness played across multiple devices at the same time. But I didn't care anymore. Tonight there was no cigarettes, no alcohol. Just me and a glass of wine on my car's bonnet where I sit, watching the starry sky and making a clear plan for my future.